In the heart of the desert, under a sky painted with the stars of an ancient world, a people found themselves standing at the brink of the unknown. They were the Israelites, a nation of slaves who had just tasted freedom for the first time. But as they stood before the vast, dark waters of the Sea of Reeds, their newly found freedom felt more like a cruel joke. The weight of their past, the chains of their slavery, and the fear of the unknown pressed down on them, making the sea before them seem like a wall they could never climb. Little did they know that this moment, this seemingly impossible challenge, would become the defining moment of their history. The story begins in the grand halls of Pharaoh, where the news of the Israelites' escape reached his ears. Pharaoh, the powerful ruler of Egypt, had a change of heart. The word heart here doesn't just mean his feelings. It represents his will, his decisions, and his authority. Pharaoh realized that letting the Israelites go meant losing a significant part of his workforce, and the idea of such a loss was too much for him to bear. So he gathered his army, the finest chariots, and the most skilled warriors, and set out to reclaim his slaves. The chase was on, and the Israelites were running for their lives. As the Israelites fled, they were a mix of hope and fear. They had been promised freedom by their leader, Moses, and by the God he served. But the reality of their situation was far from the ideal they had imagined. They were surrounded by the harsh wilderness, with no clear path forward. The sea loomed before them, and the Egyptian army was closing in from behind. The people began to panic, and their fear turned into anger. They turned to Moses, the man who had led them out of Egypt, and questioned his judgment. "Was it for lack of graves in Egypt that you took us to die in the wilderness?" they cried. Their words were a harsh reminder of the uncertainty and danger that came with freedom. Moses, in the face of such doubt and fear, remained steadfast. He had been chosen by God for a reason, and he knew that this moment was part of a larger plan. He reassured the people, telling them not to be afraid. "The Lord will fight for you," he promised. "You need only to be still." These words were not just a call to passivity. They were a call to trust. Moses understood that the only way to overcome the impossible was to trust in the power that had brought them this far. The night was dark and the tension was palpable. The Israelites were trapped with no apparent way out. But then, something miraculous happened. The pillar of cloud that had been guiding the Israelites during the day moved behind them, creating a barrier between them and the Egyptian army. The pillar of cloud also transformed into a pillar of fire, casting a glow that lit up the night. This was no ordinary natural phenomenon. It was a sign of God's presence and protection. As the Israelites watched in awe, Moses raised his staff over the sea and stretched out his hand. The waters began to part, and a path of dry land appeared before them. The sea, which had seemed like an insurmountable obstacle, became their escape route. The Israelites, filled with a mix of wonder and relief, began to cross the sea on dry ground. The waters stood as walls on either side of them, a physical manifestation of the divine intervention that was saving them. The Egyptians, seeing the Israelites escape, pursued them into the sea. But As they entered the waters, the once still sea began to shift. The powerful east wind that had held the waters back started to subside, and the waters began to close in. The Egyptian chariots, once symbols of power and control, became their undoing. The wheels of the chariots sank into the mud, making it impossible for the Egyptians to move forward. Panic set in, and the Egyptians realized too late that they had entered a trap. As the morning light broke, God looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud, and the waters of the sea came rushing back. The Egyptian army, trapped in the middle of the sea, was swept away, and not a single one of them survived. The Israelites, now safely on the other side, watched in disbelief as the waters closed over their pursuers. They had been saved, and the impossible had become possible. The crossing of the Red Sea was more than just a miraculous escape. It was a profound moment of transformation. For the Israelites, it was the moment when they truly understood the power of the God who had delivered them. They saw His might and His care, and their fear turned into faith. They sang songs of praise and thanksgiving, and their journey toward the promised land began with a renewed sense of purpose and trust. The story of the crossing of the Red Sea is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of moments, when all seems lost, there is always hope. It teaches us that the impossible can be overcome with faith and trust. The Israelites' journey from slavery to freedom was not easy, but it was a journey that changed the course of history. Their story is a testament to the fact that with God, nothing is impossible. In the end, the Israelites' journey through the sea was not just a physical escape. It was a spiritual awakening. They learned that true freedom is not just the absence of chains, but the presence of a guiding hand. As they stood on the other side of the sea, they were no longer just a group of slaves. They were a nation, united by a shared history and a shared faith. And as they looked back at the waters that had swallowed their oppressors, they knew that they were free. The crossing of the Red Sea is a story that continues to inspire and challenge us today. It reminds us that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, there is always a way through. It teaches us to trust in the unseen and to have faith in the power that is greater than ourselves. And it shows us that the greatest moments of transformation often come when we are at our lowest points, when we are forced to rely on something greater than our own strength. In the end, the Israelites' journey through the sea was a journey of faith, a journey that changed them forever. It is a story that continues to resonate through the ages, a story of hope, of deliverance, and of the power of the divine. And as we reflect on this ancient tale, we are reminded that no matter how dark the night, the dawn will always come, and with it, the promise of a new beginning.